Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to my channel. Today's recipe is a Instapot Nihari recipe. The ingredients that we'll be needing is ginger powder, chili powder. We will also be needing turmeric powder. There are big cardamom right there. There's 3 of them that we will be needing. We will also need some fennel seeds and we will need some salt, of course, and then onions. This is 1 medium-sized onion sliced thinly, and we'll need around 1 inch of ginger and around 6 cloves of garlic. Now, this part of the recipe, you need around, let's say, 3 teaspoons of fennel seeds and around 2 teaspoons of ginger powder with the 3 big cardamom, and you need a cheesecloth. Now, if you don't have a cheesecloth, this is actually a Brillo cloth that I got from the dollar store, and I cut it into a small size. It does the same job as a cheesecloth, and I could actually throw it out afterwards and not be sad about throwing it out. Now, you just tie that up and you make that. You just put it aside. You will be needing that later in the recipe, not in the beginning. The amount of red meat that I used for this recipe was around 1 pound of boned red meat. Now, once you have your Instapot plugged in and ready to go, you're going to get it to the pressure cooker setting, and you'll put it on high for 30 minutes. Now, I usually turn the keep warm off so that nothing burns or anything like that, and it doesn't stay hot. Now, the first step you're going to do is you're going to put in your oil. I used around 2 tablespoons of oil, and we are going to fry our onions. Now, I have heard that if you put a little bit of salt in with the onions, it fries faster. In my experience, I haven't really noticed a difference. It takes the same amount of time for me. So I would say just stick to frying your onions normal. If you want to try it out, see if it fries a little bit faster, go ahead, put your salt at this time. The amount of salt that we're going to be using in this recipe is around 1.5 teaspoons of salt. So you could put a half teaspoon at this time and then you put the rest later in. Now, once your onions are a amber color, that's when you're going to put in your garlic and your ginger. If you do not have fresh garlic and fresh ginger and you have paste, you will use 1 tablespoon of garlic and 1 teaspoon of ginger. And if you have the mixed paste, then you'll use 1.5 tablespoons of the mixed garlic and ginger paste. And now, at this point, you're going to throw in some garam masala. You will need around 3 teaspoons of garam masala. We are making a big batch of Nihari, so hence the reason of 3 teaspoons. Now, I was planning on giving this to my children as well. That's why my chili powder was only a teaspoon. As you can see, I put around 3/4 of a teaspoon. I did end up putting a 1/4 teaspoon in later. As for the turmeric, you only need 1/4 of a teaspoon. Then after that, once you have these seasonings in, you're just going to give it a mix and then throw in your red meat. Mix your red meat in a little bit so it's well coated with the seasonings and the onion mixture that you have just fried, and just let it sit for a little bit. So I let it sit for around 1 to 2 minutes. Tops will be 3 minutes, and then after that you're going to put in your water. I used around 5.5 cups of water. You're going to put the 5.5 cups of water in, give it a nice mix, make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pot, and then you are going to bring in that the little pouch that we made in the beginning of the video, where it has ginger powder, the big cardamom, and the fennel seeds, and you're going to put that into this water and just make sure it's fully soaked into the water, and it's not just like on the top sitting there, but it's actually, it has some water in it. It kind of gets pushed down, or put like a piece of meat on top just so it gets pushed down. The reason why is that we actually want the fragrance of these seasonings to be incorporated into the gravy. Then just put the lid on and make sure your pressure is on. I did actually turn off the heat while I was cooking, just so it wasn't too hot and nothing gets burned. Once it's done, release pressure, give it a nice swirl. After giving it a nice swirl, I just looked, I took actually one of the pieces of meat and gave it, I squished it against the side to see if it actually softened. If at this point your meat is not soft, and then you could put it back on pressure for around 10 to 15 minutes, and that should do the job. If your meat is soft, then all you have to do is look for that little blue pouch that we put in and just squeeze the excess water of that pouch out. By this time, my Instant Pot was cold, so I put it on saute for 15 minutes on high heat, just so I could do the last bit of cooking. I did not use all 15 minutes, so if you want, you can always lower it, but of course there's a cancel option, so it's better to have more time than less time. As I had this keep warm setting off while I had it in the pressure cooking mode, I needed to warm up the curry again. So once I started seeing that my water was kind of boiling, the curry was it was boiling. At this point, what I did was I started getting the flour ready. Now you can use all-purpose flour, or you could use whole grain flour, or like the flour that you get to make rotis and naans at home. You will need around 2.5 tablespoons of that, and then you will need a few scoops of the curry that you're making. Now, because my little container was really small, I ended up bringing it to a bigger bowl, and what you do is that you make it into a paste where it basically looks like a lighter color of the curry that you have. So if your curry is dark brown, it'll look like a light brown. If it was more yellowish, then it'll be looking less yellowish. But basically you want to incorporate the flour into that little bit of curry that you have on the side, so that when you do incorporate it to the rest of the curry, it actually helps thicken it and you don't get any clumps. So it does take a little bit of a time to get the right consistency and to make sure that the flour is fully incorporated into the curry. Once you see that your curry is boiling in the pot, then at that point you are going to put in your flour mixture, and make sure that when you are putting in the flour mixture, you are actually stirring at the same time. Because I had one hand on something else, I was unable to do it at this time, so I did get a little bit clumps. But when you are pouring the mixture in, make sure that you're stirring with the other hand. Okay, so pour and stir at the same time so that you don't get any clumps at all. And then at this point, you're just going to let it cook. You're going to keep cooking it until you get the desired thickness. But do remember that because of the fact that it's cooking, it might look thin, but once it cools down a little bit, it will get a little thicker. Okay, I put around a extra teaspoon of garam masala towards the end, just to give it a hit of flavor, a hit of extra flavor. This is of course optional. The Nihari tastes good without it as well, but the extra flavoring does help. So I cooked it on high heat for an extra 5 minutes, and I let it sit for a little bit so it could thicken. I did take it off the heat. Once you're done, it will look a little bit like this. I didn't get a really good picture at the end. It was just too good to sit down and wait for a picture. We ended up gobbling it up right away. But some of the side things that you would like to put on top of Nihari would be some lemon juice, some cilantro, some fried onions, and serve it with some naan or the white rice. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and follow for more.